Hello, we are live. Welcome to Shooting the Shit. How is everybody?
Wicked.
Wicked, yeah, surviving.
Are we allowed to tell the truth?
Yeah, you're allowed to tell the truth. Yeah, Rishi's on a 4-pint mug of coffee there.
Rachel's hitting the booze.
I'm on the booze. Yeah, this is the only thing getting us through the day. We're all sick to the back teeth of January. But anyway, we're here to do something exciting, something much nicer and something exciting. So we're here today, Shooting the Shit, to talk about women in teaching. So we have a few questions that I'm gonna pose to you both today. We're gonna talk about why most of the women in the classroom, or most of the teachers in the classrooms are women. We're going to talk about why classrooms are perpetuating the patriarchy. That's a lot of P's to say, isn't it? And we're going to talk about how do we make our classrooms more feminist. So Hannah, you used to be a teacher, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So when I left uni, the story of how I got into teaching is how most people, I think, find their vocation in life. So I was a temp administrator in a college, and somebody walked past the front desk and said, I really need an animation teacher in about 20 minutes. And I said, I'll do it. And then like I ended up somehow doing my PGCE for 2 years because I did it part-time, and then was teaching for like 5 years perhaps in total, just because impulsively I stuck my hand up and said, I'll do it.
That's how I get dragged into everything. I go, I'll do that. I need to learn to keep my hands down and keep my mouth shut.
I wish I'd sat on my hands. So, I mean, I did my PGCE and that was fine. And I wasn't a traditional teacher. So this was in a college. So initially I taught music, animation and games with it.
Were you teaching, or what age kids were you teaching?
I was 16 plus.
Right.
And that was for a little bit. And then I went and did 14 plus, but I did Every Child Matters. So that was all the kind of cuddly stuff like sexual health, money management, health and well-being, staying safe and all that sort of stuff, healthy relationships, healthy bodies, healthy minds sort of stuff. And then I kind of started specializing in careers and enterprise. And then I went and started doing just enterprise-based kind of careers-focused teaching. So I would kind of come up with curriculums, and I was a careers advisor, but I would also come up with a curriculum for other teachers to deliver in the classroom, and I would deliver curriculums to my own students.
So I suppose being a teacher at college, you had a little bit more leeway in terms of the curriculum that you could teach, because I know primary school and secondary school in particular, they're so rigid, aren't they, in what they're allowed to teach and what they're not?
Absolutely not. No, we had a syllabus that we had to follow because it was BTech. They had to do this outcome, this outcome, this outcome. Right. So you had to teach them incredibly structured things just the same. In the careers stuff, it was more free. But again, there were things within the curriculum that you had to hit. So like you had to teach them about British values, and you had to teach them about kind of
how to make the right consistency of gravy to put on your chips.
Exactly. Yeah. British values. How to mock your postman as he walks by and things like that. So
how to scream when somebody drops a plate or a glass.
How to clap when the plane lands. Things like that. Small talk about the weather. Yeah.
So why did you leave? Why did you leave?
Because it's absolutely fucking horrendous. It is like the worst thing. Like people who do teaching and it's their vocation, hats off, because it is so difficult. Anybody who says teachers don't deserve the holidays and they're in it for the holidays, like you need to spend just a term teaching. Because it is so, I don't know, it's so all encompassing. It's so fast paced. It's so pressurized. Like the pressure on you from all different levels of management is insane.
And it follows you home.
Insane. Oh, it follows you home. Oh my God. And like you're working in the holidays, like people don't see that. And you don't like finish at 3, like, you know, you finish at like 6. But because of the term structure, you have 6 weeks, well, like between 4 and 7 weeks to cram in so much work and so many outcomes. And there's so many barriers to that because you're dealing with kids and there's like movable fees that actually by the time it gets to the holidays, you're burnt out and then like you can't do anything.
I
in the
remember. So
corridor.
I have two experiences. I have never been a teacher. I have never wanted to be a teacher. I don't particularly like children. So, this is not an area that I ever dreamed of going into in the slightest. But once, when Leon was in reception class, they invited the mums, obviously only the
Only
mums,
the mums,
only
yeah.
the mums, and we'll come on to that. But yeah, they invited the mums to come in for just like a couple of hours to sit in the classroom, do some work, reading with their kids, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, I was a freelancer. I thought, I can do that. Let's take this opportunity. I'll show some willing at being a good parent. Went in there. Oh my God, 10 minutes in, I wanted to run away. I was like looking for an excuse as to why I could leave. In the end, I pretended that my back was really sore because I'm sitting on a small chair and I had to get out. I think I'd done about 25 minutes because just that environment in that classroom was loud, it was in your face, it was just constant kids talking, asking you questions. How one teacher and one classroom assistant deal with that all day, I mean, hats off to them. And then the other one was during the COVID pandemic. Leon came home, this was when he was in year 6, to tell me that one girl had been sick into a bin. Bear in mind, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So one girl had been sick. So the teacher had run off to PPE herself up, and the teaching assistant had. And by the time she came back, 6 girls were being sick, and they'd run out of sick buckets. So they were just being sick into bins. One was being sick into an empty lunchbox. And the teachers were there in like full PPE, and they rang up and sent everyone home. And I thought, no, whatever, we pay these people, it is not enough. Like, just imagine deal with that.
It's awful. I mean, primary school is like one thing because you've got like toileting.
You're doing
and
childcare as well,
you
aren't
are,
you?
yeah.
As well as teaching.
But high school's another beast altogether, and then college comes with its own challenges as well.
Yeah.
But what was the final straw that broke the camel's back on teaching was I just finished this class and they were awful. Absolutely awful behavior, and there were like 6 or 7 different pockets within it, and one of them was like pouring orange juice into another person's bag, and somebody else was like writing shit all over the blackboard, and somebody else was trying to break the computer. And I just spent the whole lesson going, stop it. And every time I took a breath, they would interrupt me and start talking, literally. And I walked out of the classroom and somebody threw a hard plastic rhino at my head. And I thought, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it.
That's the final rhino.
That was it.
That's the toy that broke the rhino's back. I'm out of here.
Everything that I'd just done, it was my Wednesday afternoon class. And after all that, this fucking like early learning centre rhino clunking me on the nut. And I was like, I am done.
Okay, well, we've got some good experiences there. Reish, I take it, I can't imagine you've never been a teacher, you've never wanted to be a teacher.
I'm not that way inclined. But I now will forever, whenever I look at a plastic rhino, I will think of Hannah.
All those times every day when you're looking at your plastic rhino.
Specifically for that reason, just to laugh at it.
Okay, well, so we've established that teaching is horrendous and children are horrendous and teachers don't get paid enough. But I think one of the basic premise of this Facebook Live, let's return to the point, is that the classrooms are not a particularly feminist place. And there are several strands as to why that's the case, aren't there? One is that most of the teachers are women, and yet most of the people at the top making the rules are men who have never taught in a classroom. And another thing is that because teachers are facing all of those pressures that you've just mentioned, Hannah, they don't necessarily have time. They're teaching to a strict curriculum. Feminism isn't part of that. They're teaching to tests constantly. So they've just got this pressure. So there isn't time for them to go off and have those wider conversations and blah, blah, blah. And also, classrooms are full of children and children are horrible and they just reinforce the patriarchy. And so we've got all of these strands coming in that mean that it's really hard. We're not going to break the patriarchy and create a feminist society if our classrooms aren't feminist. So how do we make our classrooms feminist? So first thing I want to talk about is the fact that 70% of teachers in England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, 70% of teachers are female, obviously, which means, 30% of them are male. And yet everybody, a disproportionate amount of head teachers are male, a disproportionate amount of of people making policy, so people in parliament, are male. So why have we got the, I mean, it's a bit like with every other sector, isn't it? But why are the people at the top making the decisions men, and then the people at the bottom, for want of a better word, are women? Hannah?
Well, it's interesting, Rach. So I'm just reading some stats that say that in 2019, 2/3 of heads were women. So that's interesting, isn't it?
Yes, but if seven, so a third of teachers need to be male in order for a third of head teachers to be male. So they are disproportionately, men rise to the top.
So is that stat taking in all of teachers? Because obviously, not all head teachers are, well, head teachers aren't teachers. They don't actually teach.
No, and some will have come in from management, won't they? I mean, I know like some of them, like Leon's school now, he's at high school, but he's part of an academy school, which is 5 schools grouped together, and they've got a manager at the top. They have a head teacher they have a head teacher in his class, but there's like a management person at the very top of that tree, and he is a man. So, disproportionately, more of the men will rise quickly and go into those management positions, i.e. head teacher roles, than the women will. So
it's interesting though as well, because statistically in governance, so I'm a governor, and statistically most governors are women. So you have
is that wonder, because they're parents?
No, not parent governors. No, right. So you only have a proportion of the board that are parent governors. So you're supposed to have some parent governors, some staff governors, and then the rest made up from the community.
Right, okay.
But I think the reason that women go into it is because typically we work part-time or flexible hours, and you obviously need to be in meetings during work time.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about this in the past, haven't we? And I don't want to go over old ground, but just the fact that, by the nature that women are the ones that will do the bulk of the childcare, and they'll work part-time, and they tend to work closer as well. Men are the ones that will get jobs, in the bigger city that's slightly further away, whereas women will statistically work closer to the home. So they're the ones that are on call to turn up to parents' evening, to do the assemblies, to do the pickup at the school gates, whatever it might be. And parent governors, I would imagine, governors, sorry, is the same thing. The women are available to have the meetings at 4:00. Whereas, men probably aren't as much. So, and that whole mentality as well of, let's get mum in, let's ask mum, let's phone mum. Oh, you forgot your PE kit, you forgot your lunch, let's phone mum, never phone dad. And so how do we get more men into schools?
Well, I think as well, when we think about those statistics, we need to think about where the teachers are. So traditionally, primary schools have got an abundance of female teachers, and as you get into secondary schools, certain subjects attract different genders. So, for example,
and that seems to be STEM, doesn't it? As well, we're back to the women.
Well, no. So where I used to work, the entire maths department was female.
Right. Oh, that's
as was the entire English department. Yeah. So there was a big drive to get girls into, women into STEM subjects, teaching STEM subjects, and science, English, and maths generally have a golden hello. So they attract kind of the top notch, because they're the most important subjects, arguably. So, you need to attract them in. But thinking about all the other departments, it's pretty evenly split. Obviously, the tech subjects tend to have male teachers, and especially like when we went into further education, the tech subjects had male teachers, and the arty subjects had predominantly female teachers. But there was a good mix. But yeah,
see, when I was at school, and I remember, my English teacher was female, my history teacher was, my art teacher, I had Mr. Watling. Big shout out to Mr. Watling, one of the greatest teachers ever. But all of the other art, ceramics, graphics teachers were female. My French teacher was female, but then my maths, my science teachers, my history and geography, my geography teachers, they were all male. And it was really, really obvious. Now, I know that's the 90s and things have changed, but Leon is at high school now, and the majority of his teachers are actually male. But when I asked him, so it's quite it's a bit different because of COVID. So the children don't move around in the same way at the moment. The teachers go to them, and they've got teachers covering different shifts because of, you know, absences and COVID and what have you. So it is slightly skewed, but the majority of his teachers are male, but the majority of them are science, maths, technology, you know, design teachers, all the rest of it. So I don't know. I don't have an accurate. Rish, when you were at school, did you have male teachers? Were they split along those lines?
I'm just thinking about it now. Excuse me, and it feels like, yeah, there's obviously some generational thing here, because I do think I don't have any experience of what teaching's like now, you know, in any way. I'm not around kids, you know, and I don't have
You?
kids or anything like that. But you know, so when I was at school back in the day, you know, it was. I did have, you know, a lot of male teachers actually, both
Right.
at primary and at secondary school. So, you know, because I was kind of, you know, just not aware of it, so to speak, it's just, that's my teacher. I don't even think about it. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it is what it is. So yeah, I had quite a mixed bag actually. So like, you know, I went to a Catholic secondary school. So there was a lot of, you know, RE teachers that were all male, you know, and vice versa. But then language teachers were predominantly female. And then I had a mix. There was a mix for science and maths. So it was kind of.
Rish, sorry, were your RE teachers, were they male because they were part of the priesthood then?
No, not at all.
Right,
No,
okay, that's interesting.
that, you know, they'd actually studied, got into, etc. It wasn't a strict Catholic school. It was just that, you know, it had Catholic tendencies. You know,
you didn't go to a convent then.
I know, but that's what I was thinking. I was thinking like Rish at a convent school. Jeezy, crazy.
No.
I will follow you. So interestingly, so Naya is at primary, and the two of her teachers, like the last 2 years on the bounce, have been a male teacher, and they are absolutely exceptional, really good. So I think, you know, I think it does very much, it depends, but obviously when you're looking statistically, you can't, you know, it doesn't balance out. I think what's interesting though is how that then impacts as children move into further education and higher education, and they pick their options. So my form I used to look after the health and social care girls, and I say girls because they were all girls that were doing the health and social care courses, and I looked after the vocational kids. So the ones that weren't doing full GCSEs, they were bolstering their GCSEs with some vocational courses. So one day a week, they would go out and do motor vehicle or hairdressing or childcare, or there was another option, but I can't remember what it was. Woodwork, you know, wood building and that, construction.
Woodwork and construction are very different things, but let's move on.
Yeah. So, and it was all boys, all girls. The gender split, it was 50-50. And even to the point one girl wanted to do motor vehicle, and my predecessor had tried to talk her out of it, because it would mean that at the college that they went to, they would have to put in a girls' toilet, and they just didn't even have a girls' toilet.
No way.
So when I was shadowing the guy that was leaving, that I was taking over, he was like, oh, you know, she wants to do motor vehicle, we need to talk her out of it. And one lad wanted to do hair and beauty, and they were like, oh, you're going to get bullied. But he went and did hair, and, you know, was amazing at it. And now I think he's a choreographer.
But do you not think it's more subtle than that? Do you not think, you know, if you are growing up, say, you know, high school children, I'm thinking of now, when you mention about doing options, if you see that most of the mathsy, sciencey, you know, practical teachers are male, and most of the English, art, you know, humanities teachers are female, if you're a teenage boy or a teenage girl, there must be a subconscious message that's coming through to you then. You know, we always talk about why aren't there more girls following STEM subjects. If you've gone to a school where only male teachers do STEM subjects and you're a girl, you might think that's perhaps not for me, that's not a path I should be following.
Absolutely. And I think as well, like the only time that's kind of counterbalanced is in PE, where you've got to have an equal number of male and female teachers because the classes are gendered. But when I was in FE, it is more evenly split then. So in FE, there were more health and social care tutors, and in HE as well, higher education, there's more of an even gender split. But absolutely, if you're growing up and you're picking your options and all you can see is, men in this role and women in that role, then you're not going to pick it. Although, go on, Reece.
I have a question or a point on that, actually, because whilst I agree with that, I also think we have to give the child a bit of credit. And by that, I mean, there's also a lot of other stuff going on when you're at school, right? And I think, speaking from my own experience, I've always got on better with male teachers. So actually, it wasn't of concern to me whether they are doing this or whether they're doing that. It's more about, me, how I feel whilst I'm in education and what I want to do next. I actually took 3 sciences as my A levels, but that wasn't based on whether they were male or female. It was actually, that was what I was good at the time. So whilst I do think there's the whole conversation about representation, I think there's other subtleties to it as well.
Yeah, there are, and I think it's a lot better. So I mean, when I was at school, probably about 5 years ago, I finished high school, and it was there was a lot of options to try a lot of different things, like woodwork and stuff, before we chose our options. There was no pressure, and there isn't pressure today, to be fair. And kids are able to, pick whatever they want now that chap's out of the way, Neil, that was not allowing girls to do motor vehicle because they didn't have toilets.
I do think, though, I might challenge that a little bit. So I remember I did food tech and I did design technology. So, and you're right, we were allowed to try that. Leon, I do feel, and I don't know whether this is because he's been put in the top set, so they're set for the year rather than setting per subject. So he's in the top set for the year rather than like maths, English, whatever. And he's been given very academic subjects. And but talking to him, that you mentioned just before, had a PE really gendered. He's been put in design technology rather than food technology, and I don't know whether that might change and he might get the opportunity to try those other things, because we don't know yet. But I do feel at the moment he's been very pushed into a male gendered education, if there is such a thing. He has to do male sports and he has to do male subjects, and I don't feel like we ever had that same thing. I think that it felt a lot more equal when in the 90s when we were at high school.
Well, it is only his first term, so
it is.
It might. But PE is very gendered. I wasn't allowed to play basketball because I was a girl and I really wanted to. We had to do fucking interpretive dance. But yeah, so that
interpretive dance.
And can you imagine? And I was,
do it now.
Well, I did. I just stood there like, and I was really good at basketball.
Can you interpret via dance your frustration at the patriarchy, Hannah?
This goes really well for the people that are listening on the podcast.
They're listening on a podcast, yeah. Hannah's doing a Victorian swoon. Anyway, carry on.
Made all the better by my Victorian collar. So there was that. But I think these days, I mean, sport is still very gendered. But where my friend Sammy works, there's a boys and a girls team for every sport. Boys netball, girls netball, boys football, girls football, boys hockey, girls hockey, badminton. There's and now they are starting to let the boys and girls play together, shock horror, in some of the sports, which I think is another thing. But so yeah, I think that actually it's not so bad. I think the problems are when it's reinforced outside of the school. And I also think as well that I know there's a lot of initiatives to close the gap between boys and girls. So I think, historically, girls have always done better in their exams than boys. And there's always been a debate. Is that ambition? Is it laziness on the boys' part? Is it that exams are skewed to work better for, female brains? Mm-hmm. Is it, what is it? People spend an awful lot of money and time trying to investigate what it is, and schools tend to have their own programs to raise the attainment of boys. And obviously, like there are programs for high achieving girls. There's high achieving girls. There's hags and bags, and lags and gags and like low achievers, high achievers, boys and girls. Yeah, I know there's all these acronyms, but there's
I literally zoned out then.
I know, I do not know what she's talking about.
I was just like,
she's just saying random words now. Hags, bags, fags, mags.
Right, so there's high achieving girls and high achieving boys. There's low achieving girls and low achieving boys, and then there's middles, and then there's raising attainment in boys. So that's to trying to get those middling boys up to higher. So hags and bags.
I mean that is true, isn't it? I mean, I do want to say, and we say this multiple times every single episode, but when we're talking about the damaging effects of the patriarchy for children in schools, and women in teaching, we have gone slightly off women in teaching, haven't we? But this is as damaging to boys as it is to girls. Yes, boys attain or attain less in testing, and at primary school age they slightly overtake by the time we get to university level, but girls outperform boys. And what is it about that? And I know from Naya and Leon, Naya just does her best at everything. Leon will do his best, but only when you've pushed him and really made him do it. I mean, he's got better recently, but he has to be praised, and he has to be explained. It has to be explained to him why he needs to do his best, and he has to be encouraged and all the rest of it. And I think perhaps the school system are back to that. It's national curriculum. It's high pressurized. They're overworked. They're underpaid. They haven't got time to do that investment in every single child. It's just teach the test, test. And it's taking away every kind of, any child that's different, any child that needs a little bit of support is just completely failed by this one size fits all system, isn't it?
It's the middle kids that lose out. So the high achieving kids get the pressure, get the additional work, because they're the ones that are going to go to the Russell Group universities. They're the ones that are going to pull up your averages. And then the lower kids, they get all the attention as well, because they're going to drag down your averages. It's these kids in the middle that lose out massively. And that's obviously the majority. And I think you're right. I think it's the pressures on teachers, because it's never like the goalpost, goalposts move constantly. Constantly. So, and the changes are enormous, and it comes from government, and they don't understand what it's like in the classroom.
And we're back to the people who are making policy are so many steps removed from the classroom. They've got no idea what it's like to be.
They don't even know what it's like to be a child that's not upper class. No, I think this is such a big problem. And when fucking Gove changed the kind of secondary education landscape, it is geared around kind of high achieving private school education. And
because they're the ones that will get the results, aren't they?
That's all they know. So so it's shit for those middle kids.
And that's been proved really with Leon. Like I say, at primary school he was fairly middling. He missed a big chunk of school in the middle because he had to have operations and was poorly and things, and he was sort of middling. But he's gone to this new high school, and like I say, they've put him in the top set. They are clearly pushing him, and he is flourishing. And because he's the one that they are relying on to prove that they can get kids through their exams and therefore get their funding. And it's so blatantly obvious. But anyway, right. We have, so that I was reading an article before, time is marching on. I was reading an article about what do we need to make our schools and the teaching profession more feminism and bring up feminist boys. So how to make feminist classrooms, basically. And the points that they said were acknowledge where there is a power imbalance and do your best to replicate it if you can. So, for example, if you've got a head teacher at the top and everybody else is female, acknowledge that and talk about it. The other one was offer different perspectives. So, again, back to challenging, but saying, you might think that, but actually there's this argument that girls are not stinky and actually they might be all right. The other one was listen to marginalized voices. So if you've got girls or women of color or, anybody who's not white and cis, and heterosexual, let them speak up, allow their voice to be heard in the classroom and don't marginalize them. And the other one was lead by example. So, be a feminist teacher and you will have a feminist classroom. But, as I was reading it, I returned to the point again and again that all of that is very nice and lovely. And of course, everybody wants to do that. But the reality of being a teacher at the moment is that that's not what it, especially, I mean, it was bad enough before, but now with COVID, Leon hasn't got the same teacher for one subject from one day to the next. How do they, I just don't know. It seems like a lovely ideal, but at the moment it just seems like miles away from being a reality.
I think the thing as well is when you're in the classroom, you're faced with an awful lot of contrasting views. So whatever you say, it kind of falls on deaf ears because they're getting it reinforced at home. And whatever their beliefs are, they come to school, they've heard their parents or whatever talk about something, and then you challenge that, and you can either spend 45 minutes debating it, or you can get on with your lesson. And you're never going to win over. You as a teacher are never going to overtake the opinions that are given to children at home, because why would they trust you over their parent? And so it's,
and also you would pick your battles for one thing, but also if you're a teacher and you've got 30 minutes or 60 minutes, whatever it might be, to deliver this lesson, and you all of a sudden have to start challenging every single misogynistic comment that is made, I mean, that's your lesson gone, isn't it? You're not going to have time to do anything else.
Yeah, but I think one of the big problems that does need tackling in school is sexual harassment of girls, low-level sexual harassment of girls, and that is endemic at the moment. Well, I mean, it always has been, and not challenged because it's just so low level.
I remember being at school, and I mean, admittedly, I was telling Leon this the other day, my tie was longer than my skirt, but the number of times I had my boobs grabbed, I had lads put their hands up my skirt, particularly at PE when you were wearing those little tiny sports skirts with PE knickers, and the number of times that lads would pull them, flick them, push your skirt up, pull your top up,
pull your bra straps. I mean, and I mean, teachers were doing it when we were at school as well, which is like pretty awful, isn't it? But it's still happening, and it's boys are talking about girls in an awful way. Boys are taking, I mean, the technology makes it worse now. They're taking photos and upskirting and stuff and passing it around, and like, this isn't just me kind of supposing, like, I've heard first-hand stories of this, and it's not challenged, or when it is challenged, it falls on deaf ears from the parents, and there's a whole load of legal issues now that come with it. So I remember when I was teaching, a year 12 lad shared some photos of his girlfriend to his mates when she was in year 11, and the police had to talk to him for distributing child pornography. But we're not having these conversations with them about what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate and what is illegal. And to them, it's just, we're not keeping up with technology and with the culture to have those conversations. But having said that, there is time in the curriculum. So that's what my role was. My job was to do all these additional bits and to teach these, kind of life skills and to challenge these perceptions in the British values stuff. So I know we joke about it, but the British values stuff was about respect and tolerance of people of all backgrounds, all faiths, all genders, all orientations and stuff. And that you had to demonstrate to Ofsted that you were upholding British values.
But as you say, the unfortunate reality is that that's what, that might be 2-3 hours in a month's lesson planning. And is that enough to challenge those ingrained views and opinions and all the rest of it that they're going to get from the rest of society and television and their parents and everywhere else, so exactly. We are out of time. I mean, Rish, just final question to you. Were you ever sexually assaulted in a lightweight way at school?
Oh my God, probably. And I probably did a fair share of doing it myself.
You probably did it yourself. Yeah, you will have been the worst offender. You were. No doubt whatsoever. So, Rish, you always say your very wise final comment, and then I always say, any final comments? So, Rish, what's your final comment today?
Well, it's been interesting because, like I say, it's a difficult subject for me because I'm so far removed from it at the moment. But I do think ultimately, after everything that's been said, it all starts from home, right? Every single thing that needs addressing here actually starts at home. And I think it sounds awful saying, and pinning it on parents and saying it's your fault, this, that, and the other. Not at all. more a case of, it might be just be a flippant comment, you know, about, say, like a lad that's overachieving or is doing really high, you know, doing really well in a certain subject, you know, being called a boff by his dad or his mum or his cousin, you know, and so, you know, said jokingly, but actually those things all have an impact, you know, and I think so it's something that, you know, does have to be much more mindful, you know, when you're talking to kids, around kids, you know, and about kids, you know, that it starts there really, and that impacts everything else, literally that. So I don't have a point, but I think it.
No,
you know,
that is you're absolutely right. And I mean, I'm sure every woman every female in a teaching role will say exactly the same thing. You know, they're wading through treacle and they're fighting a losing battle, and this has got to start at home. It's got to start at home. It's got to start with culture and society, and we cannot put it on teachers' heads to, you know, raise feminist children because they've got enough fucking shit to do.
That's it. They're going to teach. That's what teachers do. Teachers are there to teach, you know. So it's, you know, they've got like 45 jobs in a classroom, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, we were all there, and I wouldn't have wanted to teach me. Absolutely no way.
I was a nightmare.
So yeah, sorry, Mrs. Grant. Sorry about any of my old teachers that might, for some reason, be listening to this. Like, Mrs. Grant was my form teacher. She fucking hated me. I literally took the piss out of her all the time for loving Cliff Richard. So there we
are. Oh, Dally's mum loves Cliff Richard. I think you should write her a grammatically correct letter of apology, Reece.
I write in French because she was my French teacher as well, so that made it even worse. I'm so green.
Anna, final word.
Well, I mean, if we're apologising to teachers, I would like to apologise to a teacher who caught me mocking her weight in the science corridor.
Who was it?
It was that woman that used to live next door to Dad.
Oh no. Like literally sitting on your own doorstep.
No, I know. And Miss, if you're watching this, I don't think you ate all the pies.
Oh no. I don't think I have anything to apologise to teachers for. I was such a swat.
Fuck off, Rachel.
What about your horse skirts?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I did.
Would you like to apologise to Mr. Watling for getting his daughter so pissed in a field she passed out?
She did that to herself. I was just her enabler, but she did it to herself. Anyway, on that note, that's it.
I want to do my final words.
Go on,
final words. If you're watching this and you're not a teacher but you've got children, my final words are to you. Work with your teachers, like work with your kids' teachers, because you all need to pull in the same direction. Reinforce what they're saying. And if they say things that you don't like and you don't think is right, or if they treat your son or your daughter in a way that you don't think is acceptable, just kindly and gently mention it to them, because chances are they haven't thought about it, or they didn't mean it, or it's been misinterpreted. But work
a really shit day.
Oh, they're having a shite day. But work with them, so that you're all kind of pulling in the same direction with your children.
Yeah. And I would just like to take my hat off to any teacher. I don't know how you do it, and I'm grateful that you do, because I absolutely do not want to. And that is it. Thank you very much. So thank you to anyone who has watched this live. If you are watching it again on catch up, please do leave us a comment, because we will see it and we will answer it, or we'll try our bestest. If you're listening on podcast, please leave us a review and subscribe, because it helps us. And if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe below. That is it. We're going to go and let Reece have a lie down in a dark room now. See you next time. Bye.